Welcome to the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. Before we dive in, I wanted to note that as a health and wellness coach, I can support you in making sustainable lifestyle changes, tuning into your own wisdom, and building habits that align with your values and vision for your well being. I don't prescribe or treat health conditions, as I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional. Instead, I can walk alongside you as you create a healthier life on your terms. From time to time, I share conversations with guests. The views and opinions expressed by those guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect my views or those of anyone associated with wellness in a chaotic world. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always talk to your doctor or qualified mental health provider about any physical or mental health concerns. This is the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast, a place where we're having conversations about what it really takes to live well in our unhealthy, chaotic world. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. If you're beating yourself up over a bag of chips you ate in a stressed out frenzy, or you can't figure out how anyone manages to find the time to even think about wellness, you're in the right place. We talk about all of these things and more because, frankly, we don't talk to each other enough about what we're really up against every day. Let's change that right now. This week's guest is Kelly Tibbitts, life coach and host of the Vibrant Life podcast. I asked Kelly to return this week to discuss a really interesting tool that she uses with her life coaching clients called the Working Genius Model. This model was developed by Pat Lencioni and his team at the Table Group. The Working Genius Model identifies the 6 fundamental activities that are required for any type of work to get done. And most importantly, it helps people uncover their natural gifts so that they can thrive at work and in life. I wish this model had been around 20 years ago because it certainly would have helped me avoid a lot of headache, judgment, and guilt for being who I am. I'm very excited to share today's episode with you, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome back.
It's so fun to connect.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're back to talk about another one of the tools that you use to help women, and that is called the Working Genius Model.
Yes.
Tell me
I
all
also
about
got
that.
certified in that. So I'm a
Oh,
certified Enneagram coach, and then I'm certified as a Working Genius facilitator. So I had discovered Pat Lencioni when I first became a leader. He speaks at conferences. He's written a lot of great books. One of his big ideas is that when you work with people, you want to work with people who are hungry, humble, and smart. And it doesn't mean like book smart. It means smart in whatever you're doing. So when I was a teacher, of course, I want to work with people who are humble, who are hungry. They want what's best for the students, and they're smart. They're constantly learning new things about being a great educator. And so I had been following him for years, and during COVID, he discovered by accident that work needs 6 steps in order to be successful. And because he had access to thousands of leaders, he was able to take his idea and bring it to people. And they had so many great aha moments that he's now moved it from just the workplace into homes. And he's seeing, marriages and families where people are feeling just so much heard and seen and honored. And so the 6 steps, if you think of an airplane that's on the ground going up into whatever, number of miles the airplane is flying up there. You don't want the airplane going up 20,000 miles and then dropping to 10 and then going back. You want the airplane to have a nice, smooth, launch and landing. So it's 6 steps to getting work done. And all work needs 6 steps. As humans, there's 1 to 2 areas that you're a genius. When you're doing this work, it fills you with life. There are a few areas that we'll talk about where you are highly competent. And you can do them, but because it's not your genius, the more you do it, the more energy you give out. And then there's a few areas that are frustrating. They drain your energy quickly. And if you can't find people to partner with and you have to bear that burden, you're going to be exhausted. And his heart behind all the work he does is his dad was a great man, but he was in the wrong role. And he was a miserable employee. And that misery kind of, bled out at home as it often does. And he wanted to do something different for the world and help people enjoy work and do work because he felt like, and I feel exactly the same way, people were created for work, like purpose and dreams matter. And so we were just briefly talking about it. You had a little bit of an aha moment. And so I would love to help people notice there's 6 steps. Try to notice what doesn't feel true. That's always the best place to start. And then it takes a little bit of self awareness to notice which one or two might be your genius and try to do more of that. Try to fill yourself up. So, did you want to talk through the six, or did you have a thought first?
Yeah, no, please walk us through the six. The what the acronym is essentially widget.
It is widget. So the T actually ended up being T because they came up with widget by mistake. But if you think of just like a little tool, a widget. So the first letter of widget is W, and that is wonder. And people who are gifted in wonder know how to ask good questions. So before work begins, there should be questions. What are you doing? Simon Sinek, start with why. Why are you doing it? How should we do it? When? Why are we even changing what we're doing to do something new? If the house is already painted white, why are we going to paint the walls? The problem with being excellent at W and not being at least competent in I is you can really judge yourself, because many times you would have brought really good questions to the table, but not had any answers because the next step wasn't your genius. And so I've worked with quite a few people at this point who had so many ahas about being strong in questioning, but not necessarily strong at ideating. And that was sort of an aha moment you had about wondering. It probably makes you a really good podcast host. You probably have great questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember when you brought this up, and I remembered in my last job, I worked there for 10 years, but I would get very frustrated because they would constantly be saying to me, how can you be more innovative? That's your
Mm,
weakness. Let's be
mm,
more innovative. And yet
mm.
I was still asking tons of questions of them and I had no answers.
Right. And so,
And
how frustrating to expect every human to be an innovator.
mhm.
It's not every human's genius. So, here they had such a gift at the table. Let me ask you all the questions, and then you go off and innovate. So, innovate, ideate is the second step. And that is you're the person when there's a whiteboard in the room, you can't wait to dream a million possibilities. It does not mean you know which ones will work and why they'll work. You just love dreaming. Not a genius of mine. So it made being an entrepreneur a little hard. I can't just ideate. And then the next step is discerning. I like this step. If there's a bunch of different ideas in front of me, I like noticing the pros and cons. I like putting different ideas together. So that's the first step. So say you're at a work meeting and you're like, you know what, we need to do something different. So I used to be a pastor and we would put on an event every year. And I would think a really good way to move this event into a better event is to let the person with the W come up with all the questions. Why did we start at this time? What if we did that instead? And they don't have any answers. They're just Wing. They're just questions. And the ideator's like, we could have it in Costa Rica. And there's no limits. Like, just brainstorm and ideate. But the discerner needs to come in and say, well, the budget's $500 and we need to feed 1,000 people. So we probably have to do A, B, C. What's hard is if you're not self-aware and one of these areas is your frustrating area, you don't want to do that work. So I worked with so many people who were so great at ideating, but they didn't really have any discerning in them. And so they'd get really bored as we were trying to take their ideas and make them practical. And to energize themselves, they would come up with a new idea. And the person who invented this platform, Pat Lencioni, that's what he noticed is when he needed more energy, he went back to ideating. And his partner, who he respected at work, and she was a female, said to him, why do you do that? And he said, I don't know. And then he went to discover it. And I think that's the most amazing, healthy leader, to not be defensive, but to go discover, why do I do this? And it turned out he got energy from ideating and he got bored as the process went along. And so now he knows to sort of step back and let other people do the next three steps. So widget starts with W, wonder, I, ideate, D, discern. Then you need a galvanizer. The galvanizer first has to galvanize themselves and then galvanize other people to go do something that's been decided to do. So the discerner said, okay, we're going to have the event the second Saturday of September. We have $500. We need to feed 1,000 people. Half of it's going to be provided through potluck. Half of it's going to be this way. The galvanizer then has to convince everybody, we want you to go home and make something and bring it with you. We want you to invite a friend. Some people love being able to be that person. Some people get completely exhausted there. My business partner noticed that was her deep frustration. And she was in leadership where she would have to stand in front of people. And she said nobody wanted to listen to her. She was amazing and is amazing at wondering, but no one noticed that gift. And then she was sort of in a role where galvanizing was expected, and that was her deep frustration. And without self-awareness, she didn't know any of this. and it made it really hard for her and the team she was on. So then after the galvanizers, like, let's go, we're going to go do this amazing event. The E, the enablement, which is my number one strength, would go to different people and say, boy, I think you'd be so great at moving picnic tables. Would you mind doing that? And if you can get the right person in charge of picnic tables, they love it. But if you get the wrong person doing picnic tables, they're frustrated and they might not even end up where they're supposed to be because they didn't really want to do it, but they didn't know how to say no. So that was my sweet spot of leadership, and I didn't even know it. I wasn't self-aware. So the E is like equipping, enabling, encouraging people to do the tasks that allow us to do whatever we decided to do. The galvanizer is like, let's go, but they're not necessarily equipping and encouraging the people who are going to go do it. They're just selling the vision. They're the energy. And then finally, we need the T. The T of widget is tenacity, but it's really like finishing. It's the person who wants the files to actually go back into the file cabinet when they're done. It's the person who says, we said we were going to do this, let's finish it before we move on. And so there are 6 different ways of getting work from before it's even begun to finished. And nobody has all 6. And everybody gets tired at some point and needs some encouragement or someone else to just partner with them. And it doesn't help anybody if we jump around to where our genius is and try to put all the energy there. So as an unaware leader, every single meeting, I was jumping to the D of discernment or the E of enablement. And I wasn't taking the time to W and wonder what we need to do and when we need to do it. But without knowing better, I did partner with somebody on purpose who did do that well. My struggle was being an ideator is so hard for me that I didn't want to spend any time doing it. And I had a whole bunch of ideators on my team who loved to think of new ideas, but didn't necessarily want to finish the project once we made a decision to do it. So as I was just briefly overviewing them, anything you noticed about you and what's easy for you to do at work and what's kind of frustrating or exhausting?
I can tell you right off the bat that galvanizing would, I mean, even if I tried to do that, I would be completely tapped out.
And,
No
and
energy there.
and so what's interesting is you and I are both trying to create things and bring them to the world, and that involves galvanizing. It involves
Right.
telling other people about us and how great our program is. And both of us notice, boy, that's exhausting.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed that there's like, I can tell almost right off the bat from just listening to you that like one of my geniuses is probably the wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And, my bottom is the galvanizing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the stuff in the middle that gets
Yeah.
a little murky.
Yeah, nuance is hard to notice, isn't it? So the
Hmm.
first step of wondering, if you were thinking today, I want to create a podcast, and someone said, would you just spend an hour thinking of some good questions about podcasts? And it would be very easy for you to say, I wonder which platform I should host it on. I wonder how long they should be. I wonder. That would be easy for you to do.
Yes, very easy.
Then going into a community, like you and I are part of an online community, and saying, come join me, friends, and having to go live every day and share it would exhaust you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would take hours for me to just get up I guess I'll call it courage, maybe it is. Just the energy and courage to put something out there like that, to
Right.
say, I'm doing this.
Yes. And yet, because we're in a community that's pretty large, if you went on today, you'd notice the people for whom that's quite easy, the getting out
Hmm.
there and telling people about things. So they're probably high in galvanizing. The other things are like most of us, those are your competencies. And we can always grow in our competency. It might be something, even galvanizing for you, galvanizing for me, ideating for me. The more you do something, the more competent you get. But what he really wanted people to learn from this tool is burnout often happens when we're in our competent or frustrated roles more than the roles that energize us. And I do think it all comes down to energy, like what things bring you into that abundant, aligned energy and what things move you out of it. And as an adult, you have to do all 6 steps of work, right? I used to be in ministry, and nobody really wanted to like change garbage bags out. No one felt like that was their ministry. Lots of people wanted to sing in the front. Like all the things have to happen in order for something to work, right? In a family, somebody does have to actually buy the groceries. In galvanizing is interesting because galvanizing starts with you. So you might even notice it's hard to make yourself move and do things, let alone inspire everybody else to join you. So objects in motion tend to stay in
Yeah.
motion. That's why
Right.
James Clear's Atomic Habits is so helpful. What kind of steps move you towards movement, right, is
Yep.
always good for you to know. So the other things are your competencies, and there's a nuance to them. There's some that you can do depending on the energy of the day, and it's fine. You don't feel depleted at the end of the day. It also, a lot of it comes down to the people that we're in community with, and how do they either, speak to that core motivation that you have, or they, push against you with an energy that's not affirming. But in order for your podcast to happen, in order for all of the things that we do to happen, the first thing is some great questions. So if you're going to have a guest on, it's probably easy for you to come up with 10 good questions to ask them. Then you have to ideate. Well, do I want to do it this way or that way? If you have to constantly ideate, if all of a sudden people don't want to listen to podcasts anymore, they want to do something new and different, that might not be super fun for you, and it might be really fun for somebody else.
Right.
The discerning of, should the podcast be 20 minutes? Should I cut this part? Easier or harder than ideating?
Easier.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what we just really want to notice, the nuance. I can do a little bit more discerning, but the ideating of changing the podcast cover and putting out on YouTube, and I'm going to get really tired doing that. And I don't have enough energy for that. So I'll save that for Saturday. But I can discern today. I have enough energy to do that. Then the galvanizing of being the one out there that's promoting yourself, that's telling everybody this would really serve you. You should come listen to it. Easier or harder than discerning?
Oh, very much harder.
So what kind of energy do you need for galvanizing? You often need a lot of emotional energy.
Right.
And so we don't generally as a society have great tools for emotional energy depletion. Like when you get physically tired, people say, take a vitamin, go take a nap, go sit in the sunshine. What do you need when you get emotionally depleted? I think back when my girls had concussions, mental depletion, you can use concussion protocol. Don't use your phone. Don't try to solve any hard problems. But emotionally, it's kind of different because some people are more introverted and they need more time alone. And some people are more extroverted and they need time with people who fill them. So there's a nuance there. So if you're going to go galvanize and you use up all your energy, how are you going to refill yourself? That would be great for you to discover. And then enablement, like helping your guests succeed, helping the people who are listening to your podcast find it easier and get the notes they need. Compared to galvanizing, easier or harder?
Easier.
But still something that will take away your emotional energy and doesn't necessarily fill you up as much. And then the tenacity, making sure the notes are right and the podcast is where it's supposed to be and everything that needed to be done is done.
Hmm.
Do you get a little energy when that's...
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to know because not everybody does. So what's interesting when things are a genius, we just take it for granted that's not a genius and everybody can do it. But now that your eyes are open to it, you might discover a whole bunch of people. I think just to the community we're in, the people that I think of that are like amazing galvanizers, high energy, I don't think they like finishing things. And then what happens when you don't really enjoy the tea work or it's depleting, you tend to just pivot and start something new instead of finishing the thing that you began. And so it might be a genius that you haven't even been aware of, that if you say you're going to do something, you finish it. And for other people, it's so frustrating and exhausting, they don't. And might, again, have an aha, oh, that's why that relationship was a little bit difficult. The part that was easy for you was the beginning and the end. And someone that you worked with, it might have been the middle. And if you knew that and everyone's self-aware, what a great team. When we're not self-aware, we're just sort of judging each other and frustrated by the other.
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting things when I started listening to Pat's podcast about this model.
Yeah.
Was that like when teams have this language around it, they can move past that judgment and also the guilt that people were feeling about it.
Right. And so at the core, that is why I want to be a life coach for the rest of my life. I feel like the gift I gave my 3 daughters who are like just living really vibrant lives, right, is they're much less unkind to themselves in their 20s than I was. Because I wasn't self-aware. I was judging myself against all kinds of different people and holding myself to a standard that now that I'm self-aware, I just say, oh, of course. How human of me. Of course, that part would have been hard for me. And it doesn't mean it's an excuse and I don't want to grow, but for you to take the little bit of energy you have and put it into an area that's going to give you more energy is such a gift to you in the world. And taking that little bit of energy that's not even enough to do something that is exhausting and frustrating to you is just going to deplete you more. You get to be intentional. Oh, if I could do this one thing, sit with somebody and let me ask them great questions and then send them the notes on it. Oh, that would just give me that spark. And then I can go do the next thing. That would be so much better than, okay, I'm going to open up IG Live and try to galvanize people. And I don't have any energy. And now I just want to take a nap and close my company, right? Like that's the gift that self-awareness can give us is maybe you just need a partner who loves to talk and you can help them ask good questions.
Yeah. Like the message is really that we need each other.
100%.
Which for someone who is a solopreneur can be a tough thing to take in and just admit.
Well, I think that's why you and I might have been drawn to the same community is, you know, when Kathy Heller said, here's a quilt, that was what drew me in. I want to be with other people because I can't do this alone. And when I can be in the energy of other people who are passionate about what I'm passionate about, and can spur me on. You know, it was why I was a pastor for a long time. It's why I was an educator. I think communities exist so that people can support each other. Nobody has all six geniuses. And that's so freeing. If you knew that now and could go back to that meeting where they're like, you need to ideate more, you could have stood in your own wisdom and said, actually, it's not a genius of mine. And nobody has all six geniuses. And you don't even need to say it out loud to just know it in your soul. And then you don't receive from broken people things that just aren't serving you to take in.
Right. And I wouldn't have beaten myself up for, you know, a year or two at least for that.
Right.
You know, someone telling me something that they might have needed something from me, but it wasn't something that I could give them.
Right. And you probably would have served that community best if they kept you in your spot of genius and allowed the ideators who probably weren't struggling with ideating, they're probably struggling with discerning the next step. But if they lost I've met many ideators who lose their energy in the discerning process and then they don't want to continue on. So they just go ideate something new. And that doesn't serve most people because we should start things and then finish them and then judge it and say what worked, what didn't, and what can we do better. But it often helps us to actually complete projects that we begin before we start new things.
Yeah, definitely. So there's one other level to this model that I found interesting, which is that if you kind of draw a line down horizontally across it, there's like the top is receiving.
Yes.
And what is the bottom again?
So they're responsive and disruptive energies. So the W is at the top, the I is on the bottom. The D is at the top, the G is on the bottom. The E is at the top, the T is on the bottom. So think of inventors and imagine a person standing still. The inventor's going to lean forward with their energy and be like, what if we create this? Can you picture that? They're just like leaning forward. The galvanizer is going to lean forward and be like, come on, everybody, let's go. And then the T, when it works well, has been given the authority to say, okay, team, we said we're going to finish it. Let's do it. Now imagine still standing straight and then leaning back. The W is sort of leaning back. Things don't seem to be working really well right now. I wonder. But you need something to respond to. So the W, the D, and the E, they're all responding to something that already exists. They're not creating something out of nothing. They're responding to it. So the wonder is like, this just isn't like right now outside my window, it's snowing. Someone who wonders would say, I wonder how I could move that snow a little bit easier. They might not invent a snow blower, but their question might help somebody invent the snowblower. And the person who invented the snowblower might be like, what if we put a fan connected to the shovel? And what if we did this? And what if we did that? And the discerner would say, well, now you need an electric source, or you need some gasoline, or you need this, but what about that? And the problem with the W and the D is it's a responsive energy. They don't have that strong assertive energy in general. And so people might not hear them because they're not the loudest in the room. Like the years that I led, one of the gifts that Pat Lencioni gave me is that you want the humble person at your table. And the humble person might not always yell. You might need to wait and ask them specifically, hey, what do you think? So knowing that some people have a responsive energy and you might need to ask them, what do you think? Would make most people a better leader. Don't just listen to the energy of the ideator and the galvanizer, right? They're going to come in, you're going to know they're in the room. The wanderer, the discernment, the enablement, they might just be leaning back a little bit. And if you are wonder and discernment and enablement, maybe this is the podcast that helps you believe you are a genius and they need your words and they need your voice. And you can lean in and you can share. So if you could go back in time and that person's like, you're not innovating enough, and you knew to the core of who you are, I'm actually quite the genius. If you let me in my role, I'm going to ask good questions and I'm going to lead this team to complete it, but I have to have the authority to do so. And if you walked with that confidence, that team would be served. But most of us are not self-aware enough to know where our geniuses lie. So yeah, some of them are responsive and some of them are disruptive. You know they're in the room. They're disrupting everything.
Right. And I remember too in that same career being criticized for not speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an unnatural thing for me.
Right. You had
Even
a
if
responsive energy.
I had to have someone ask me a question in order to respond to it or say something.
Well, we had a conversation on a previous podcast about you being an Enneagram 9.
Mm-hmm.
And the gift of the 9 is that they can see all the points. And the struggle of being a 9 is you can see all the points. So then it's hard to come up with a committed view. So you have to feel incredibly safe in the environment to share. Because so many decades of your life, you were told, like, well, that's not really an opinion if you can see everybody's opinion.
Right.
And so now that you've grown in self-awareness, if somebody was speaking and you knew what to say and you were like, okay, because I have responsive energy, I'm going to lose a lot of my energy when I lean in and speak right now. Am I going to be heard? Is it safe to do so? Is this worth putting any energy into? That's one of the most important things I taught my children is if you're in a community and the leadership doesn't value you, leave. I wasted so many decades trying to help people see my value who had no desire to see it.
Hmm.
So that is the gift that you now give yourself with self-awareness. I am a genius. I bring such value to this table. This current team is not open and receptive to it. I believe there is something out there that will be. And I love that they have the evidence to prove it. That's what our brains do, right? Like when our brain has a thought, it's going to find the evidence to prove it. You are the only one that can have your back. I'm the only one that can have my back. I'm literally a genius. This is where it is. This is not my genius. It frustrates me. It exhausts me. I'll do it, but my energy is going to be depleted by the end of it. And if I keep putting energy into this specific group of people, is there the potential for it to be invested and grow? Or am I just basically throwing it down a hole and no one's going to listen to me? Maybe it's time for me to move on.
Yeah. That's a hard lesson to learn too, though.
It is so hard.
And so I've heard stories where people who they get into their competencies.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good at something, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should continue doing it.
Well, if it's not their genius, it probably doesn't energize them. And so when something is your frustration, it draws the energy out of you very, very quickly. The competency, depending on how competent you are, and again, this is where the Enneagram and the working genius overlap, what's motivating you. So an Enneagram 3 would be motivated by being successful. And so if they could succeed at their competency, they're going to keep doing it. Well, the problem is they're still losing a little bit of energy every day. It's like Christmas time and everybody putting a little bit extra on the credit card, but there's no quite path to pay it off in January. And then by March, it's got that interest due. And now you're in a slightly bigger hole. That's what happens with our competencies when we're not self-aware. So of the 4, one of them is pretty close to being a frustration for you. And if you have to do that one all the time, you probably will figure it out because you're a highly competent woman. But at the end of every week, you go home a little bit more tired. And Sunday night, you dread Monday a little bit more. And so that's the struggle, and why so many humans are in burnout is we don't live examined lives. What if I could do more of this? And on my podcast, when I talked to somebody who was a leader once about this, she said before she knew the working genius, she kept taking on roles that were either in her competency or frustration because it didn't occur to her that anybody else wanted to do them. And once the team became self aware, the people who loved doing the things that she was frustrated by actually grew in their like enjoyment of their own job. But she was doing those roles because she thought nobody else would like them. So we're in this community together. If we could let the galvanizers galvanize and you and I could sit back and do the work we're doing, everybody could be happy. We'd help them complete the things they want to complete. And someone else could be the one sort of pushing and using that disruptive energy to tell people, hey, life coaches are incredibly valuable to have. Having somebody by your side who's helping you notice what's important to you, making decisions, and then holding you accountable and encouraging you to make those small steps, that could really serve you. Um, but again, without self awareness, we don't notice that, and we end up doing the thing that is exhausting on repeat and expecting to somehow still have energy at the end of the week. So anybody who's currently in a job where they're constantly depleted, this might be the tool that helps you understand why.
That is amazing. This is such important work, I think. And I'm so glad you could bring that to us today. So tell us where people can find more information about you and your life coaching.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you can go to kellytibbitts.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Kelly Tibbitts Life Coaching. And if you're interested in hearing about Pat Lencioni, he is an author of several books, but he does have the Working Genius podcast. And what's fun there is he tries to bring people in with the different geniuses. And sometimes it's hearing somebody else who has your genius speak that can really help you have that aha moment. But if you'd like to go deeper with that, I actually help people discover their working genius. And it takes it so much deeper than the book. So that's one of the things we could chat about.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. You can also find more about each episode on the website at wellnessinachaoticworld.com. Or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, where we can chat more about living well in this stressed out, chaotic world. And as always, I hope you have a healthy, happy week. If today's episode resonated with you, our private Facebook group is a great place to dive deeper, ask questions, and share wins with people who understand. It's free, it's private, and you can join by clicking the link in the episode description. I hope to see you there.